Have you ever thought about what it would be like to have a perfect digital copy of yourself? An AI that could stand in for you, make decisions just like you, and maybe even think like you? I know, it sounds like something straight out of a movie, but this future might be a lot closer than you think. Let's get into it. So this is really the big question researchers are trying to answer right now. Could we actually create an AI that is our perfect stand-in? I mean, imagine it. An AI that could fill out surveys for you, test products, or even handle a negotiation on your behalf. It could free us up from so many tedious tasks. The potential is just massive. But as you can imagine, the challenges are too. And here's the core problem, right? Truly understanding human behavior for research is incredibly difficult. It costs a ton of money to find and pay participants. There are all sorts of ethical lines you just can't cross. And let's be honest, people get tired or biased. These hurdles have held back social science for decades. So the big idea is, what if we could just simulate people instead? And that brings us to the digital twin. Now, this isn't some generic AI persona. We're talking about an AI model built from one specific person's data, all of it. Their demographics, personality traits, how they think, their economic preferences. You feed all of that into a large language model to create a digital mimic of that single individual. The key idea, and this is really important, is not to create an AI that represents an average person, but a true one-to-one digital copy of a specific human. That's where the real value is supposed to be. I mean, this could completely change everything from public policy to how new products are made. But the huge question is still hanging out there. Does any of this actually work? Well, to find out, researchers set up a massive mega study. What they did was they took a representative group of people from across the US, built their digital twins, and then put both the humans and their AIs through the same 19 experiments. These covered everything from politics and creativity to privacy. This was the ultimate reality check. And the headline result? It was pretty incredible. The digital twins were able to predict their humans' responses with about 75% accuracy. Now, on the surface, that sounds amazing, right? Like, we got a solid B- for cloning a human mind. But, and this is where it gets really, really interesting, that 75% number, as good as it sounds, might be a little bit of an illusion. Because when the researchers dug deeper, what they found changes pretty much everything. So it turns out you can get that same 75% accuracy using a much, much simpler model. One based only on a person's basic demographics, like their age, their gender, their location. So all that rich, detailed personal data, it wasn't actually making the twins' answers more accurate at guessing the exact response. It was doing something totally different. Okay, here's a really simple way to think about it. Imagine you have a weather app, but all it does is predict mild and sunny every single day. If you live in Southern California, that app is going to be right most of the time. Its accuracy is high. But it will completely fail to predict that rare but really important thunderstorm. See, it's broadly accurate, but it doesn't actually capture the variations that matter. And that's the key difference here. Now, this slide shows you what's really going on. Look at the chart on the left. When the AI only has demographic data, its predictions are just a scattered cloud. There's almost no relationship between what the AI says and what the human actually says. But now look at the right. When you add all that rich personal data, the dots start to line up. That's called correlation. The twin is getting much better at predicting the relative differences between people. And this table just spells it out with the numbers. Check out the accuracy column. It barely moves from 74.6% to 74.8%. That's basically nothing. But now look at the correlation column. It jumps by over 35%. So here's the big takeaway. Adding all that personal data doesn't make the twin a better clone of you, but it makes it much, much better at understanding what makes you different from, say, your neighbor. Okay, so these twins are good at capturing those relative differences, but not for everything. The study also found there are specific areas where they do really well, and other areas where they just completely miss the mark. So let's break down where they shine and where they fail. Turns out the twins are surprisingly good when it comes to social and personality stuff. They can predict things about how you interact with others, your pro-social behaviors, personality traits. They do pretty well there. But when it comes to politics, the correlation just plummets. They really, really struggle to capture the nuances of what people believe politically. And there's one more really crucial wrinkle here. The performance of these AIs isn't the same for everyone.
The study found that there are systematic differences in how well they could model different kinds of people.
And what the researchers found was that the twins are, right now, a much better reflection of certain groups, specifically people with higher education, higher incomes, and more moderate political views. This points to a classic challenge in AI, where models can end up reflecting the patterns of the most well-represented groups in the data. It's definitely something to watch as this tech develops.
So, after all of this, where does that leave us? It's pretty clear that these digital twins are not the perfect clones we see in sci-fi movies. The evidence is telling us we need to think about them in a completely different way.
The authors of this study really put it perfectly. They said these AIs aren't really mimicking our messy, often irrational human thought process. Instead, they're acting more like hyper-rational, almost all-knowing versions of us. They process our personal data with a kind of pure logic that we ourselves just don't have. They aren't copies. They are something entirely new. And that leaves us with this final, really provocative question. If these things aren't our clones, then what are they? And more importantly, what do we want them to become? Maybe they're not a stand-in for us, but more like a super well-informed advisor, a tool not for replacing us, but for helping us understand ourselves better. The technology is just getting started, and figuring out where it goes next, well, that's something we all have a say in.